By the way, news coming in, there seems to be some relief for Adani as well as Tata Power. We're getting in some more information. The Supreme Court has allowed for the application to be made before the CERC to amend the PPA as per the recommendations of the high-powered committee. Some more details will keep flashing by on your screen. The stocks are reacting positively. Tata Power is now at the high point, a gain of 6.5%. Lata is here. Lata?
I think there's a very big development. The background to this is that initially when, after the Deepak Parekh committee recommended, the CERC had allowed that, the compensatory tariffs be increased. That is, when raw material prices increase, you pass on and allow tariffs to be increased. But the appellate, the APTEL also agreed, but Supreme Court said no, a force majeure does not apply because the reason given was Indonesian coal was getting expensive. But the Supreme Court, in its judgment, also said, don't ask for a hike under force majeure, you can ask on other reasons. So this went back, and then the Gujarat government appointed a committee with Pramod Dev, the former CERC chairman, Mr. S.S. Mundra, former deputy governor of the Reserve Bank, and a few others. And they recommended that under some other rules, you can increase power tariffs. It would come to about 10 pies or 15 pies, a minor increase when you take all the fixed costs and the extent of capacity utilization. That is now been approved by the Supreme Court. So it will just have to be made into rules and then implemented. So it's a very big positive for Tata Power, for Adani Power, I would assume even for SR Power. So, together for all these companies, if it becomes a positive, it becomes positive for banks. Yeah. Because a lot of them are worried that some of these could become bad loans. I mean, this is an all-round positive in terms of the health of the power sector and therefore the health of people who have lent to them. PFC, REC should come up for you. Just about everyone benefits if you are able to pass on the cost. I wouldn't know immediately who are the lenders, but it's definitely relief.
Okay, in fact, let's go across to ASHMIT Kumar. He's right there outside the Supreme Court. ASHMIT, if you could just take us through the proceedings there, what was the judgment and the way forward from what you've picked up?
The direction that the Apex Court has given is that as of right now, the power producers in question, that's essentially Tata Power, Adani Power, as well as SR, all three of them will be eligible to move the CERC to propose an amendment to the power purchase agreement. Now, let's keep in mind that the Gujarat government had constituted a high-powered committee, and the high-powered committee had come out with various recommendations, chief amongst them being that the cost of coal, especially the Indonesian coal in question, can be passed on to the consumers. That was one of the key recommendations. Others included haircuts for the lenders and extension of the PPAs. All of these amendments, important, and of course the chief amongst them being passing on of the coal costs, will require amendments to the power purchase agreement. Now, keep in mind that there were consumer watchdogs here present in the court. They opposed these amendments, arguing that this cost will eventually have to be borne by the customers, and hence it's not in the interest of customers. That the power purchase agreements are quite clearly listed, that there can be no amendments made. However, what the Apex Court today observed is that should these plants close down, it would eventually be the customers who will have to bear the brunt. And in light of that, the Apex Court, in light of this high-powered committee report, has allowed these companies to go ahead, approach the CERC for seeking amendments to the PPA. Of course, the Apex Court has also said that these very consumer bodies who were present in court will be at liberty to oppose these amendments before the CERC. So the CERC will now be conducting lengthy hearings and will have to give its clarity. The timeline that has been prescribed by the Apex Court is 8 weeks, no more than 8 weeks. That's the time that CERC has to decide on the issue. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, ASHMIT, for that. Anisha is also here with us. Anisha, you want to add in your thoughts?
Oh, well, yes, I'll talk about how important it is for these companies because remember, Adani Power has a debt of around 40,000 crore rupees. The debt equity is really high, and it was very important for the sustenance of this company to really get this approval because remember, they are dealing with a quarterly loss run rate of 200 to 400 crore rupees. So even generating any unit from these power plants is causing them a bit of a loss. In fact, for Tata Power, Kotak had a negative SOTP of 37 7 rupees. So this plant itself was adding a negative value to the stock of around 37 rupees, and that is the level of importance that both these power plants have for these companies. Remember, of course, this is not the end of the road. They have to go to the DISCOMs, but given the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to change the rules of the PPA, comes as a very big positive, because remember earlier they had rejected it on account of force majeure, and there was a niggling worry whether the PPAs can be bilaterally agreed upon by the government as well as the DISCOMs or the generators. Now that has come through, and that's the reason both of these stocks are reacting positively. It is very important for both these companies. As I've been mentioning, Adani has huge debt. They have under recoveries of around 60 to 70 paise per unit. Yes, there is a bit of calculation involved, and only a part of the tariffs will be given on to the consumers. But any amount of benefit coming in for these companies, any amount of 10 to 20 to 30 paisa will go a long way for these companies, because Tata Power is already working on blending the imported coal on the domestic coal. So they just need a bit of more help, and that is what has come by.
Okay, Anisha, just hold on while you do the calculations. ASHOK KHURANA, the Director General of the Indian Power Producers Association, is with us. Association of Power Producers of India. Good morning, Mr. KHURANA. Just put in perspective what this means in terms of benefit to the power producers as well as to banks.
Thank you very much. Mine is a very positive development, and you have only added the producers and the bankers. It's also a positive for consumers. See, if you really see, when the time when Adani has stopped supplying power, Gujarat was buying power and all states were buying power on the higher than this cost.
Yes.
That's the main point they have made in committee report also. And then committee was also capped to meet the volatility of the imported cost. They have capped the price over there. So it's a win-win for all. Instead of mothballing these three projects and wasting almost 70,000 crore rupees, it's much better to run these projects and provide power to consumer, because the substitute power today is expensive than this power.
Absolutely.
So all these three stand to gain. So what Supreme Court has said, that in case the procurers and the suppliers are willing to amend the PPA with all the safeguards which committee has suggested, then they must amend the PPA so that the bankers get their money back. And the positive for this is all three have agreed to forego the losses already incurred. So they start afresh, by the way. They are taking a very big hit.
Absolutely.
They are taking a big hit for prospective continuation of power supply. And we have seen ourselves in last about 2 months, the short-term power market went to about 18 rupees.
Okay.
The demand growing over there.
No, absolutely. Mr. KHURANA, you know, just because a wrong price was entered into a decade ago, to persist with it and to write off expensive power plants was always a losing decision to take, and it's good that the Supreme Court has stepped into the breach and rectified it. It would have been much better if perhaps the court had allowed it in the previous round itself. Be that as it may, the legal niceties had to be followed, and at least 3 years later, the court has allowed prices to be passed on. Otherwise, consumers would end up paying perhaps 8 rupees and 6 rupees per unit. So clearly, very welcome. Do stay on. We would like to know whether there can be any, roll-on benefits for other power companies as well. Whether the price of power companies itself, which are now in the distressed sale category, can rise because of definitely a turning point coming in the country's power sector. But can we go that far? We have got Mr. P. SHANKAR, former power secretary, and also Mr. ANIL RAZDAN, both former power secretaries, joining us. Mr. SHANKAR, would you go to that extent to say that probably now we have hit the bottom and the power sector will only start improving from here on after this judgment?
I think this is a specific case, a specific instance of the fuel price increase in a different country being allowed to be passed through to tariff. So I wouldn't think that this would mean anything else for anybody. If you have a similar case of power plants which have difficulties of passing on the fuel price, on very similar conditions, probably this would can be taken as a precedent.
Okay, yeah, one
but
hopes.
Otherwise, I don't think it will apply.
I guess at the moment those power companies are not stranded because they are not able to pass on prices. There the problem is the DISCOMs are simply not buying. But we will come to that in just a minute. Hopefully, if they are able to charge a little more for power from these companies, even DISCOMs are better hydrated with liquidity, one hopes. But we've got Mr. Pramod Dev, member of the panel, with us. Mr. Dev, thank you very much indeed for joining us, sir. Can you tell us how we should read this judgment, whether we can now say that it's not just these three companies, but some kind of relief can come for the entire sector?
Well, I have not seen the judgment, and since I was traveling, it's only that...
We could read it out to you. We could read it out to you. The Supreme Court has allowed application to be made before the CERC to amend the PPA, provided both sides agree. That's the judgment from the Supreme Court.
Very good.
Yeah, your reaction, sir?
Well, you see, as per the Electricity Act 2003, appropriate commission has to decide the tariff. Now, as far as the two plants are concerned, Tata and Adani, those are multi-state. So it has to be CRC. As far as the third plant is concerned, ISAR, that is GRC.
Okay.
So unless they have get another one more...
No, but the GRC itself is an applicant over here, isn't it? So I guess it won't be a problem.
No, the GRC is not an applicant. I think it is GUVNL.
GUVNL. Okay, sorry.
Which buys the power.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm coming to these are the two major.
Okay.
It's RCB just incidentally. So what happens is that the tariff, since both the parties have agreed to amend the tariff, that means the buyer and seller, so it is the CRC which has to decide that. And that's what exactly the petition filed before the Supreme Court was. And now based on the high power committee thing, those were the basis for all these amendments that they are proposing. And CRC will hear it. They will be calling the consumer representative. Our high power committee did call the consumer representative. We have heard them, and that is part of our report also. But statutorily, regulatory commission has to hear all the stakeholders.
But you expect that they will allow it, no, sir? Mr. Dev, you expect that they will allow the price increase, and if yes, by how much?
You see, I cannot, it's a quasi-judicial body, BRC.
Yes.
So I cannot say what they will allow. But if both the parties are agreeable, here it is a matter of whether you can run that plant or not, because you are dependent on imported coal. So that being the case, so I guess the whole exercise was that everybody takes a haircut.
What was your committee's recommendation in terms of haircuts as well as in terms of the price hike that should be allowed?
No, it was not the price hike. We had put a certain ceiling on the imported cost of coal, no? Because if it crosses that, then again there has to be review, no? So you can't just go on. Because after all, if tomorrow the international sellers form a cartel and the prices go, or say like rupee depreciates, then also you have a problem, no?
Yeah, but Mr. Dev, what was your own recommendation in terms of CRC stance earlier, and given the fact that the high-powered committee is pushing on these reforms as well as the recommendations, don't you think that it will be likely that despite the pushback that we're getting from the consumers, this might just go ahead?
Oops.
Yeah, I think we just snatched the line with Mr. Dev, but we do have others, and if we have Mr. KHURANA with us, I would like to pose this question to him, that, okay, it has to go back to CERC, but given the fact that CERC had earlier pushed for passing on some of these tariffs to the consumers, as well as that is one of the recommendations of this high-powered committee, despite the pushback coming in from the consumers, is it more likely that this will go through, Mr. KHURANA?
See, my likelihood of this going through is very bright for simple reason. See, if you really recall the Supreme Court judgment, if you read it carefully, has kept the door ajar for CERC to operate under 74. Now, Mr. Pramod Dev has gone 9, but he is the one who gave the earlier judgment under 74-2, by which give regulatory a wide power for saving a project in the interest of all the stakeholders. Therefore, what Supreme Court said earlier, the force majeure clause is not applicable. But 74B was applicable then also. And you have the Mr. Deepak Parekh committee report over there, which has gone through all the calculations. So my idea is CRC once again review the recommendations made, hear the objections, and the chances of these projects getting the pass through to an extent by which all three parties, that is the bankers, promoters, and the consumers, gain over there.
Mr.
That would be the endeavor of CRC.
Mr. KHURANA, do you expect it to be another long-drawn battle? It has already gone on for almost half a decade now. My understanding is that the court has given CRC 8 weeks. Do you expect this will finally reach some resolution in 8 weeks, or do you expect maybe some more, appeals coming in from the discoms or the consumers, or are we very close to the end of this particular battle?
The idea is all those who have to object will object. They can CRC can do daily hearing. CRC can, in any case, because it's Supreme Court order, and come up with an order in next about 8 weeks' time. The question is whether those consumers now once again would like to litigate this order to appellate tribunal and then once again take it to Supreme Court.
Yeah, that can always happen. Well,
so that's the only thing. But my idea is if all these consumers these discoms just think not on the point of you're amending the PPA, just think and see themselves figures.
Yeah, we take your point, Mr. KHURANA.
Buying expensive power.
Yeah, take your point, Mr. KHURANA. Take your point, Mr. KHURANA. Just we have to quickly wind up this discussion. SANJIV, BHASIN, what is your stock market view of this? Would you go positive on power companies or also on banks? What's your look? What's your read-through?
Yeah, so Lata, as a disclosure, we've been positive on 4 stocks. 22, 23 was Adani Power, Tata Power was 65, and PFC RTC, which we think will be huge beneficiaries given that power financiers have had to bear a lot of uncertainty. We think the road forward, once this is true, should be like you've seen on some of the steel companies where the assets will actually be very aggressively bid. And I think it should be a very big positive for the power sector. So we have, as a disclosure, buy on all these 4 stocks, of course on decline, but we think power could be a huge outperformer on the stock prices of these in 2019.
Okay. And finally, Mr. RAZDAN, you have seen this tension from your time in the ministry. Do you think it's finally coming to a viable commercial close?
Because it's a logical step. In fact, the last time when the Supreme Court had also declined to give the benefit, I was a little disappointed. Because when these projects, at least the mega projects, when they were bid out, it was on the clear understanding that they are to be based on imported coal. And if they were to be based on imported coal, and technically there's not a change of law within our country, but there is a certain change of law or regime, at least in Indonesia. And if the project was based on imported coal as such, then I think equity demands that we take a broader view just in what is equitable. Because if conditions change, the whole project virtually is frustrated. If the cost of coal goes up 2-3 times, then there's no way that the producer can keep producing and incurring heavy losses.
Fair point.
So hopefully, you see, this argument should stand, and this will be hopefully a pointer to the future also, because when we are basing ourselves on commodities which are international, and international prices keep changing, to expect that 25-30 years the prices will be stagnant, and technically, of course, the producer has taken all the risks he has foreseen, but the fact remains that nobody can foresee that far.
Fair point, sir.
But let's hope that, of course, if everybody takes a hit, the consumers will also pay a little more, hopefully. The producers will not get the entire profit that they were planning earlier. They will also have to take some hit.
All right, sir.
And I think it's in the interest of the sector.
Yes, sir.
And all the 3 segments.
Yes, sir. We have to wind it up on that note. Mr. RAZDAN, Mr. Shankar, Mr. KHURANA and SANJIV, BHASIN, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And I think the market reaction is telling it all. 10% higher on Adani Power and I think even Tata Power.
17% higher on Tata Power. But for now, we need to slip into a very short break. But we'll come back with the other big story. The rift between the government and the RBI has widened and the relationship has hit a new low. So when we return, we'll tell you what sources are telling CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned for that big story.